Hi everybody, I'm back with the second tutorial on the stroller tote bag. This one we're going to cut our fabric. I've already cut my outside panels to save some time, so I will show you how to cut the other ones. First we're going to take our inside fabric and get it lined up. And the first thing we want to do is even out this right hand edge. And to do that, I'm just going to take my ruler, and it has grid lines on it. I'm going to line the fold with one of the lines. And we're going to cut off as little as possible so that we don't have very much waste. So I'm just lining that up right along the bottom so that I get a nice straight edge. Take my rotary cutter, a little bit of pressure, and I'll just cut off a little strip. And then, since I am right-handed, I like to flip my fabric over this way, make sure it's still lined up. Now I like to line my fabric up with the grids on my cutting board, my mat. So I'm going to line that straight edge up with the line, and this straight edge up the fold with the horizontal line. Now this piece I'm going to cut is the main piece of the bag. So this piece that we're going to cut is going to be 17 by 34. My fabric is about 44 to 45 inches wide. So I'm going to cut my 17-inch piece from my fabric. So I just need to count over from my line, 17. And I'm going to line the squares on my ruler up with the squares on my cutting mat. And it should also make it line up with the straight edge of my fabric as well. And we're just going to cut off a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and cut that. And then, that's just going to be scrap. What I'm going to do is open this up and cut this to my 34-inch length, which will be 17 inches across, since it's folded. Since it's folded in half, I'm going to cut 17 inches, which will make it 34. Okay, same thing. I'm going to line up my ruler with the mat. And move my scrap off to the side for now. And I will now have my 34 by 17 inch piece for the inside of my bag. From this fabric, I will also need a 13 by 7.5 inch piece. And I'm going to get this from this piece of scrap that I have left over. I'm going to do the same thing, just going to line up my edges so that I can cut off a straight edge. And I'm going to cut off most of this because this is my selvage, and that doesn't make for a good bag. Line up our ruler. Go ahead and trim that off. Again, I like to flip my fabric over, and I'm going to cut this one to this piece is going to end up being 13.5 by 7.5, so I'm going to cut it down to 7.5 inches first. And there's that. And that piece will probably end up being scrap, but maybe not. Oh, it might work. And then this. I'm going to open this up and now cut it down to my 13.5 inches. Okay. So now I have my 7.5 by 13.5. And this piece I'm going to cut down to be my 13.5 by 6. So we're going to just do the same thing, line up all of our edges so that it's nice and smooth. And with your fabric, you'll probably have it all in one piece and you'll just be able to keep cutting your lengths. You would do the 17-inch length and then cut a 13-inch length, and you'd be able to get your 7.5 and your 6-inch out of that. And so let's even out this edge. And this time I need a 6-inch strip. Okay, and then we need to cut this down to 13 inches. So I'm just going to even out, or cut off the selvage on this side. Flip this around, and we need this to be 13.5 inches. Alright, so now we have 3 of our pieces out of that fabric, and the last piece we need is a 13.5 by 2.5. And I think I might be able to get that out of this piece of scrap right here. Yes, I will. So I'm just going to fold this in half so that I can, that's already really even. So I'm going to rotate that over, and this one I'm just going to line up 2.5 on my ruler and not worry about the board. So I've got 2.5, and then I need to cut this one down to 13.5, and I will have all of the measurements to cut your pieces down to posted at the bottom in the comments. So 13.5 by 2.5. Alright, so what you should end up with is 4 pieces of your outside fabric and 4 pieces of your inside fabric. Now we have our trim, and the fabric will most likely be about 44 to 45 inches long in the width of fabric. So you should just be able to cut 2 2.5 inch strips for your trim pieces. So I'm just going to even this out, and then I'm going to flip it over. And I don't really need to line this up on the board because I'm just going to line it up on my ruler at 2.5 so that the bottom is even, and then the 2.5 inch line is along the edge. And we'll just go ahead and cut 2 of these. Alright. And then these we need to cut down to be 40 inches. So you'll have 2 strips that are 2 by 40. 2.5 by 40, excuse me. So I'm going to line these up together and cut them at the same time to save a little bit of time. Just make sure that they're nice and straight. And we're going to go to 20 because they're folded in half. Okay. And just cut these off, and now I have my 2 strips at 2 by 40, 2.5 by 40. The last thing we need to cut is our interfacing. And the first piece we need will be 17 by 34. And with the interfacing, you'll need probably about 1.5 yards if you get the one that I listed on my previous tutorial. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to straighten up this side edge. And then my first part, I'm going to cut down to 17. And then we need a piece that is, actually that's not long enough, so I'm going to have to get another piece. Or I'll just add to this one actually. I'm just going to piece my interfacing. Since it's getting ironed on, it's not going to hurt it that it's not all one piece. So I have 27 inches and I need 7 more. So I'm going to cut a piece of this 7 inches wide. You might be able to. Okay, so we need a 7-inch wide piece. And then we need to cut that down to the 17 inches. All right. So these will be our 2 pieces for the bag. Now we need a piece that is 13.5 by 7.5. So I'm going to cut my 7.5 inch strip. And if you get your piece, if you get your 1.5 inch yards of the interfacing, you'll be able to get that last piece all in one strip. I had 2 pieces of mine, and so I wasn't able to get it onto one piece. And then we'll also need a piece of this that is 6 inches wide, which is the width of my ruler. So I'm just going to line the edge of my ruler up on the edge. And then both of these need to be cut down to 13.5. So I'm going to try to cut them at the same side. Alright, and then we're going to cut it down to 13.5. You might be able to hear my daughter. She's downstairs and she wants up here. Alright, so those are the pieces for that. Now we should have everything that we need. So what you're going to need in the end is you'll need a 6 by 13.5 piece of interfacing, a 7.5 by 13.5 piece of interfacing, and your 17 by 34 piece of interfacing. Okay. Then for your trim, you'll need the 2 strips at 2.5 by 40. For the inside fabric, you will need a piece 2.5 by 13.5. You'll want a piece 6 by 13.5, 7.5 by 13.5, and 17 by 34. And for your outside fabric, you will need the same sizes as the inside. You'll need the 2.5 by 13.5, the 6 by 13.5, and the 7.5 by 13.5, and then the 34 by 17. If you have any questions on this tutorial, just let me know and I will try to clarify anything that you may not have understood. The next tutorial that I do on this will be starting to sew. So I will see you then. Bye.